Commander Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Nexus Prime looked like a giant metal flower floating in space, with 6 arms stretching out from its center. Each arm belonged to a different alien race. Today, for the first time in human history, Earth would meet the Galactic Council. Jake felt his stomach twist with nerves. He had trained for this moment for 3 years, but nothing could really prepare. Someone for meeting aliens? Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew how important this day was. Distance to Nexus Prime? Jake asked. 2,000 kilometers in closing, sir, replied Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. Amy was young, maybe 25, with bright red hair and freckles. She had been chosen for this mission because she was the best at learning new languages. Any word from the station? Jake asked. Yes, sir. They're giving us docking instructions for Bay 7. The ceremony will begin in 2 hours. Jake nodded. 2 hours to change the course of human history. No pressure at all. Dr. Lisa Brooks walked onto the bridge carrying a thick folder. She was the ship's cultural specialist, a woman in her 40s with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent months studying everything humans knew about alien cultures. Commander, I've got the final briefing materials, Lisa said, handing him the folder. The Zephyrians will speak first. They're made of living crystal, so they communicate through light patterns and sound. The krill are insect-like and share a group mind. The ethereals are basically living gas clouds. Sounds simple enough, Jake said with a small smile. Lisa laughed. Right, simple. Just remember, no sudden movements, no loud noises, and definitely no jokes. These species don't understand human humor. Captain Ryan Powell joined them on the bridge. Ryan was Jake's security chief, a tall man with dark skin and serious eyes. He had been against this mission from the start, believing it was too dangerous. The honor guard is ready, Commander, Ryan said. Though I still think we should have brought more weapons. The Galactic Council requested we come with minimal weapons, Jake reminded him. This is a peace mission. Peace missions have a way of going wrong, Ryan muttered. Amy turned from her station. Sir, we're getting a transmission from the station. It's Ambassador Crickstall of the Zephyrians. Put it on screen, Jake ordered. The main screen filled with swirling colors and patterns. Slowly, a voice came through the speakers. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with electronic music. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Crickstall. We welcome you to Nexus Prime. Please follow the guidance beacons to your docking bay. The ceremony will begin at the appointed time. Thank you, Ambassador, Jake replied. We're honored to be here. The screen went dark. Jake looked around at his crew. Everyone seemed nervous but excited. All right, people, this is it. Remember, your training, follow the protocols. And let's make Earth proud. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the station's main ceremony hall. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. The walls were covered in symbols from dozens of different worlds. In the center of the room was a raised platform where the Galactic Council members waited. Jake wore his best dress uniform, dark blue with gold trim. Beside him stood Lisa in formal diplomatic robes, black with silver patterns. Ryan wore his security uniform, looking alert and ready for trouble. Amy carried a special communication device designed to work with alien technology. The ceremony hall was filled with aliens. Jake had seen pictures, but seeing them in person was different. The Zephyrians looked like walking diamonds, their crystal bodies reflecting light in rainbow patterns. The krill moved together like a single organism, their insect bodies clicking and buzzing. The ethereals floated above the ground, their gas-like forms shifting and changing color. Ambassador Crickstall stood at the center of the platform. The crystal alien was tall, maybe 8 feet, with a body that seemed to be carved from blue-white diamond. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire hall. Beings of the galaxy, we gather today to welcome a new species to our council. The humans of Earth have requested to join our peaceful alliance. We have prepared the traditional ceremony of greeting. Jake felt his heart racing. This was really happening. Humans were about to join an interstellar community. The human delegation will now approach the platform. Crickstall announced. Jake started walking forward, his team behind him. The hall was completely silent, except for the sound of their footsteps. Hundreds of alien eyes watched their every move. Lisa had practiced this approach dozens of times on the ship. Walk slowly, keep your hands visible. Bow when you reach the platform. Simple. But as they got closer to the platform, Lisa's long ceremonial robes caught under her feet. She stumbled, trying to catch her balance. Her arms flailed as she fought to stay upright. Jake reached out to help her, but it was too late. Lisa fell forward, landing hard on her knees in front of the platform. Her communication device clattered across the floor. The folder of important documents scattered everywhere. The hall went completely silent. Every alien stared at the fallen human. Jake's heart stopped. This was a disaster. The most important moment in human history, and they had just embarrassed themselves in front of the entire galaxy. Lisa looked up from the floor, her face red with shame. She glanced around at all the staring aliens, then at her scattered papers. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Lisa started to laugh. It started as a small chuckle, but grew louder. She sat back on her heels, still laughing, and shook her head. "Well," she said, still giggling, "that's one way to break the ice." Jake stared at her in horror. She was laughing. At the most important ceremony in human history, Lisa was laughing at her own mistake. The aliens reacted immediately. The Zephyrians. Crystal bodies began flashing rapid patterns of light. The krill buzzed loudly, their insect forms moving in agitated circles. The ethereal's gas forms swirled faster, changing from calm blue to alarmed red. Ambassador Crickstell's voice boomed across the hall. "What is this behavior? What is happening to the human?" Jake quickly stepped forward, helping Lisa to her feet. "I'm sorry, Ambassador. Dr. Brooks is fine. She just tripped." "But the sounds," Crickstall said. "It's crystal form flashing. Bright colors. The facial expressions. Is this a form of attack?" "Attack?" Jake said, confused. No, she was laughing. It's a human expression of of amusement." The alien delegates began talking among themselves in their various languages. The noise was overwhelming. Jake heard clicking, buzzing, whistling, and sounds he couldn't even identify. Lisa had stopped laughing, but she was still smiling. She looked around at the agitated aliens with confusion. "I don't understand," she whispered to Jake. "What's wrong with them?" Amy stepped forward with her communication device. "Sir, the translator is having trouble with the word laughter. It doesn't seem to exist in their languages." Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. The aliens didn't understand laughter. They had never heard it before. To them, Lisa's perfectly normal human reaction must have seemed completely alien and possibly dangerous. Ambassador Crickstall raised one crystal arm, and the hall slowly grew quiet. "Humans," the ambassador said, its voice now cautious, "we require an explanation. What is this laughter behavior? Why did your delegate make these sounds and expressions?" Jake looked at Lisa, then at his crew, then at the hundreds of worried aliens staring at them. How do you explain laughter to beings who have never experienced it? This was going to be a very long day. 2 years after first contact, the galaxy had split into two sides. On one side were the governments that wanted to control or ban human imagination. On the other side were the beings who believed that creativity was worth any risk. Between them, a dangerous underground war was beginning. Deep beneath the surface of a dead moon, writer Danny Price sat in a hidden chamber telling stories to a group of alien rebels. The chamber was carved from solid rock and hidden from consortium scanners. The only light came from glowing crystals that some of the aliens had brought from their home worlds. And then the brave knight realized that the dragon wasn't evil, Danny said, his voice echoing off the stone walls. The dragon was just lonely and scared, like everyone else in the kingdom. Around him, aliens from dozens of different species listened with desperate hunger. These were beings who had risked everything to be here. Some had abandoned their families, others had given up important jobs, and a few were wanted criminals in their home systems, all because they couldn't live without human imagination. "This is madness," whispered Vex 12, a former consortium security officer who now led one of the largest rebel groups. "We're hiding in caves like criminals, all for the right to hear stories. Stories that make us feel alive for the first time in our existence," replied Zem Prime, an alien philosopher whose writings about imagination had been banned by his government. "I would rather be a criminal who can dream than a free citizen who cannot." The underground network had grown rapidly as more aliens became desperate for human creativity. They called themselves the Imagination Liberation Front, and they had built secret facilities on dozens of worlds where humans could share their gifts without government interference. But these underground centers were dangerous places. Without the safety controls that existed in the legal imagination centers, humans were being pushed to their limits. Some aliens demanded stories that lasted for days without stopping. Others wanted experiences so intense that humans collapsed from exhaustion. Ellen Ward had been working to expose these illegal operations. She had formed an alliance with moderate aliens who were also concerned about the situation. Together, they had discovered something terrifying. "They're not just consuming human imagination anymore," Ellen explained to a secret meeting of human leaders. "They're trying to steal it." She showed them recordings from a hidden camera in one of the underground facilities. On the screen, a human woman sat connected to a complex alien machine while she told a story. The machine was scanning her brain, recording every neural pattern, every creative impulse. "They're trying to copy the process," Ellen continued. "They want to bottle human imagination and sell it like a drug." The experiments were being conducted by a rogue alien scientist named Dr. Quinn III. He had been expelled from the consortium for his dangerous research, but he continued his work in secret, funded by criminal organizations that saw human imagination as the ultimate commodity. "If they succeed in copying our creativity," Ellen warned, "they won't need us anymore. Humans will become obsolete." Meanwhile, back on Earth, the official imagination trade was becoming more controlled and restricted. The consortium had imposed strict limits on how much creativity each human could share and how often aliens could experience it. Guards monitored every session, and both humans and aliens were scanned for signs of addiction or dangerous changes. But the restrictions were creating their own problems. Humans who had been making fortunes from their imagination were now limited to a few hours of work per week. Many felt frustrated and angry that their natural abilities were being regulated by alien governments. Carl Mitchell, who had built his business empire on imagination trading, was one of the most affected. He had gone from being one of the richest men on Earth to struggling to keep his company alive under the new restrictions. "This is insane," he complained to Dr. Nina Foster during a heated board meeting. "We're letting alien bureaucrats tell us how to use our own minds. It's like letting them regulate how we breathe or how our hearts beat." But Dr. Foster had changed her mind about the whole enterprise. After seeing the damage that uncontrolled imagination exposure was causing, she had begun to support the restrictions. "Maybe we moved too fast," she admitted. "Maybe we should have studied the effects more carefully before we started selling our creativity to the highest bidder." Their argument was interrupted by urgent news from the underground. Danny Price had been captured during a raid on one of the secret facilities. He was being held by consortium security forces and faced charges of endangering galactic stability. The news of Danny's arrest sent shockwaves through both the human and alien communities. He had become a symbol of the power of human imagination. The boy whose simple story about a dragon had started everything. Now he was a prisoner, and many saw his arrest as an attack on creativity itself. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Young aliens who had been exposed to human imagination refused to return to their old lives. They painted murals on government buildings, wrote poems about freedom, and told stories in public squares despite the threat of arrest. On the Zephyrian homeworld, a young alien named Kree 7 led a group of rebels in a daring plan. They had learned to create simple stories of their own, and they decided to share these stories with other aliens to prove that imagination could spread beyond humans. "We are no longer the same species that first met the humans," Kree 7 declared to a crowd of thousands. "We have tasted dreams, and we will not go back to being machines that think but do not feel." The crowd cheered as Kree 7 told the first story ever created by a Zephyrian in millions of years. It was simple and crude compared to human stories, but it was original, imaginative, and powerful. "Once there was a star that was sad because it shone alone in the darkness," Kree 7 began. "But then it realized that its light was reaching other stars far away, and they were shining back, and together they made the universe beautiful." As she spoke, something incredible happened. The other young aliens in the crowd began to glow, their bodies responding to imagination created by one of their own kind. For the first time, aliens were experiencing the joy of creativity without needing humans to provide it. But the story also triggered a violent response from the authorities. Security forces surrounded the square and began arresting anyone who showed signs of imaginative thinking. The rebellion was spreading, but so was the crackdown. Back in the underground facilities, the situation was becoming desperate. Dr. Quinn 3's experiments had taken a dark turn. He was no longer just trying to copy human imagination. He was trying to extract it directly from human brains. "The neural patterns are too complex to replicate artificially," he explained to his criminal backers. "But if we can extract the actual brain tissue responsible for imagination, we can transplant it into alien minds." The plan was monstrous, but the potential profits were enormous. A single human brain could theoretically provide imagination for thousands of aliens. The criminal organizations were eager to begin harvesting. Ellen Ward learned about the plan through her network of allies. She immediately contacted every resistance cell she could reach, both human and alien. "They're planning to turn us into spare parts," she warned. "We have to stop them before they start cutting up human brains to feed alien addiction." The resistance began planning their most dangerous operation yet. They would need to rescue Ganny. Price from Consortium Custody shut down Dr. Quinn 3's laboratories and exposed the truth about what was happening in the underground imagination trade. Carl Mitchell, despite his anger about the restrictions on his business, joined the resistance. When he learned about the brain harvesting plan, "I may want to make money from human imagination," he told Ellen, "but I draw the line at murder." Dr. Nina Foster also joined, bringing with her detailed knowledge of the alien technology being used in the experiments. "We created this monster," she said. "Now we have to destroy it." The resistance included humans from all walks of life and aliens from dozens of species. They were united by a simple belief that imagination was too precious to be controlled by governments or exploited by criminals. As they prepared for their mission, Tony Martinez shared his insights from months of deep interaction with alien minds. The changes in his brain had given him the ability to understand alien thought patterns in ways that no other human could. "They're afraid," he explained. "The governments, the criminals, even some of the addicted aliens. They're all afraid of what imagination really means. Because once you can imagine something different, you can't go back to accepting things the way they are." Artist Amy Chun, whose paintings have become increasingly alien and beautiful, added her own perspective. "Imagination isn't just about stories and art. It's about the possibility of change. It's about hope. And that's the most dangerous thing in the universe for anyone who wants to stay in power." The resistance knew that their mission would be dangerous. They were going up against the most powerful forces in the galaxy, both legal and criminal. But they also knew that the future of creativity itself hung in the balance. If they failed, human imagination would either be controlled by governments or harvested by criminals. If they succeeded, they might create a new kind of galaxy where creativity and logic could work asterisk. 1 year after first contact, Dr. Lisa Morgan walked through what had once been a peaceful alien research station. Now it looked like a disaster zone. Equipment lay abandoned, screens flickered with unread messages, and aliens sat in small groups, completely ignoring their surroundings as they listened to recorded human stories on portable devices. "This is worse than I thought," Lisa said to alien psychologist Zen 7, who had asked her to visit the station. "How long had they been like?" "This?" Zen 7's skin shifted to a dark red color, which Lisa had learned meant he was worried. 3 weeks. They stopped working, stopped eating regularly, stopped communicating with their families. All they want is more human stories, more human art, more human imagination. Lisa watched as a group of tall, elegant aliens sat motionless, their eyes closed, listening to a recording of a human child singing a lullaby. They had been there for hours, completely lost in the experience. "It's like a drug," Zen 7 continued, "but worse than any drug we know. Physical addictions can be treated with medicine. This is an addiction of the mind, of the spirit. They don't want to be cured because they say life without human imagination is not worth living." The problem was spreading across the galaxy like a plague. The Zephyrian home fleet, once the pride of their civilization, now drifted through space with skeleton crews. Most of the officers and workers had abandoned their posts to experience human creativity. Supply ships went undelivered, communications went unanswered, and entire worlds were losing contact with the galactic community. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Morgan had been studying the effects of prolonged exposure to human imagination on alien brains. What she found terrified her. The aliens weren't just enjoying human stories. Their brains were being physically changed by them. "Look at these scans," she showed Zen 7 on her portable equipment. "This is the brain of a Zephyrian before exposure to human imagination. See how certain areas are dark, inactive. Now look at this scan taken after 6 months of regular exposure." The second image showed a brain that was dramatically different. Areas that had been dark were now glowing with activity. New neural pathways had formed, connecting parts of the brain that had never worked together before. "It's like their brains are growing new parts," Lisa explained. "Parts that have been dormant for millions of years are suddenly active again." "Is this dangerous?" Zen 7 asked. "I don't know. They're evolving in real time, but we have no idea where this evolution is leading." At the consortium headquarters, the situation had become a crisis. Entire sectors of galactic civilization were collapsing as aliens abandoned their responsibilities. The director, Ival Prime, called an emergency meeting of all member species. "We are facing the greatest threat to our civilization in 1,000,000 years," Ival Prime announced to the assembled representatives. "Not from war, not from disease, but from our own desires. We must take immediate action to control the spread of human imagination." The debate that followed was intense. Some species wanted to ban all contact with humans. Others argued that they needed to study the phenomenon more carefully. A few suggested that the changes might actually be beneficial. "Perhaps this is not a crisis but an opportunity," suggested an ancient being called Crix Prime. "Our civilizations have been stagnant for eons. Maybe exposure to human creativity is exactly what we need to grow again." "Growth through chaos is not growth," Ival Prime replied firmly. "It is destruction. We must implement the containment protocols immediately." On Earth, the effects were being felt in other ways. Artist Amy Chun had become one of the most famous humans in the galaxy, but the constant interaction with alien minds was changing her in frightening ways. She sat in her studio, staring at a painting she had just completed, unable to understand how she had created it. The painting showed mathematical formulas that no human mathematician had ever conceived, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at but felt somehow beautiful. The colors were wrong, not colors that human eyes should be able to see, but she had painted them anyway. "I don't remember painting this," she told Dr. Morgan during one of their sessions. "I sat down to paint a simple landscape, but my hands started moving on their own. It's like something else was guiding them. Lisa studied the painting with growing concern. Amy, you need to take a break from working with the aliens. This level of exposure is clearly affecting your brain chemistry. But I can't stop, Amy said, her voice desperate. When I'm creating for them, I feel more alive than I've ever felt. I can see things, understand things that normal humans can't. It's like I'm becoming something more than human. The same thing was happening to other humans who spent a lot of time sharing their imagination with aliens. Writers were creating stories in languages they didn't know. Musicians were composing melodies that followed alien mathematical principles. Children were drawing pictures of impossible geometries that made adults dizzy to look at. Tony Martinez, the truck driver who had become famous for his travel stories, was experiencing the most dramatic changes of all. He had spent months sharing his imaginary adventures with aliens, and now he could barely function in normal human society. I can see the connections, he told Ellen Ward during one of their meetings, between everything. I know that if a butterfly lands on a flower in Tokyo, it will affect the weather on a planet 50 light years away. I can feel the thoughts of aliens on distant worlds. Sometimes I forget that I'm human. Ellen was more convinced than ever that the commercialization of human imagination was dangerous. She had formed a group called the Human Heritage Foundation, dedicated to protecting humanity's creative abilities from exploitation. We're losing ourselves, she argued at a public meeting. We're becoming something else, something that might not even be human anymore. Is that really worth all the money and technology the aliens are giving us? But her message was hard to sell. Earth had become the richest planet in the galaxy. Poverty, disease, and hunger were almost eliminated. Cities were being rebuilt with fantastic alien architecture. Humans were living longer, healthier lives than ever before. Look around you. Businessman Carl Mitchell argued at the same meeting. We have paradise. We have everything we ever dreamed of. All because we shared our gift with the galaxy. But what happens when we're no longer human enough to have that gift? Ellen shot back. The crisis deepened when the consortium's defense systems failed. The operators, who were supposed to monitor for threats from hostile civilizations, had become so absorbed in human fantasy novels that they ignored their duties. For 6 hours, the entire consortium was vulnerable to attack before backup systems activated. Emergency protocols were immediately put in place. Eval Prime announced that no alien would be allowed more than 1 hour of exposure to human imagination per week. Strict quotas were established, and violators would face severe punishment. This is for the safety of our entire civilization, Eval Prime declared. Human imagination is too powerful to be consumed without limits. But the restrictions only made the addiction worse. Black markets sprang up where aliens could get unlimited access to human creativity. Illegal recording devices captured human stories and songs, which were then sold at astronomical prices to desperate aliens. Some aliens began showing withdrawal symptoms when cut off from human imagination. They became depressed, listless, and unable to function. A few even died, apparently from what could only be called broken hearts. Meanwhile, researchers like alien scientist Clicks44 were making an amazing discovery. After months of exposure to human stories, some young aliens were beginning to show signs of developing their own imagination. They started creating simple drawings of things that didn't exist, telling short stories about impossible events, and even dreaming while they slept. This is unprecedented, Clicks44 reported to the consortium leadership. We are witnessing the return of abilities that our species lost millions of years ago. The humans aren't just entertaining us, they're teaching us to be creative again. But these developments only increase the fear among conservative alien leaders. If their people developed imagination, would they still be controllable? Would they still accept the perfectly ordered societies that had brought peace and stability for so long? The situation reached a breaking point when a group of young aliens, led by a Zephyrian called Kree 7, publicly declared that they would no longer accept limitations on their exposure to human creativity. We have tasted freedom, Kree 7 announced. We have felt joy, wonder, and hope. We will not go back to the gray existence of pure logic. We demand the right to learn, to dream, to imagine. The declaration sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. For the first time in millions of years, aliens were rebelling against their governments, demanding change, asking for something more than efficient survival. Back on Earth, Amy Chin stood in her studio, looking at her latest painting. This one showed two worlds, one gray and logical, the other bright and chaotic. In the center, human and alien figures reached toward each other across the void between the worlds. "I think I understand now," she told Lisa Morgan. "We're not just sharing our imagination with them. We're helping them remember who they used to be before they became perfect. And they're helping us become something we never dreamed we could be." 6 months after the first alien ships appeared over Earth, the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Dr. Lisa Morgan stood in what used to be Times Square, but now looked more like a scene from a science fiction movie. Gleaming, alien structures rose between the old buildings, and beings from dozens of different worlds walked the streets. Alongside humans, the biggest change was the massive building that dominated the center of the square. The sign above its entrance read Imagination Experience Center in both human languages and alien symbols. Lines of creatures from across the galaxy waited patiently to get inside, all hoping to experience something they had never felt before. Lisa shook her head in amazement. "I still can't believe this is happening." Beside her, businessman Carl Mitchell smiled as he watched the crowds. "Believe it, Dr. Morgan. This is the future of human civilization. We're not just another species anymore. We're the most valuable beings in the galaxy." Carl had been one of the first to understand the business possibilities of human imagination. Within weeks of the aliens' arrival, he had formed the Imagination Trade Consortium with xenobiologist Dr. Nina Foster. Together, they had created a new industry that was making Earth the richest planet in the galaxy. "The numbers are incredible," Dr. Foster said, looking at her tablet. "We have over 10,000 aliens visiting Earth every day. They're paying amounts that would buy entire star systems just to hear a human child tell a bedtime story." Inside the Experience Center, the scene was unlike anything that had ever existed. Humans sat in comfortable chairs, surrounded by groups of aliens who listened with intense focus as stories were told, songs were sung, and art was created. The aliens' reactions were always the same: wonder, joy, and something that looked like spiritual awakening. In one corner, children's author Helen Brooks was reading to a group of tall, blue-skinned aliens. Her story was about a princess who could talk to animals, and as she spoke, the aliens' bodies began to glow with soft light. Helen had discovered that she could earn more money in 1 hour storytelling than most people made in a year. And then the princess asked the wise old owl, "How can I save my kingdom?" "Helen, read." The owl looked at her with his big golden eyes and said, "Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything." The aliens made soft humming sounds of pleasure. One of them, a being called Vex Prime, leaned forward. "This princess? She does not exist." "No," Helen said gently. "She's just a character in a story. I made her up. You created her from nothing?" "Yes, I imagined her, and then I shared that imagination with you." Vex Prime's eyes widened. "You have given birth to a being that never lived, yet she feels more real to us than many actual people we have known." Across the room, filmmaker Rob Taylor was showing his latest movie to a group of crystal-like beings. The film made no sense to human audiences. It was about a tree that could think and a river that sang, but the aliens were mesmerized. Rob had learned that the more impossible and illogical his movies were, the more the aliens loved them. "This is the greatest thing that has ever happened to our species," Carl said as he watched the scene. "We've gone from being a minor planet to the center of galactic civilization in just 6 months." But not everyone was happy with these changes. In a small coffee shop near the Experience Center, philosophy professor Ellen Ward was meeting with a group of concerned humans. She had been one of the first to question whether humanity should be selling their imagination to aliens. "This is wrong," Ellen said, her voice filled with passion. "Imagination isn't something to be bought and sold. It's the most sacred part of what makes us human." Around the table, other humans nodded in agreement. They included teachers, artists, writers, and ordinary people who felt uncomfortable with the commercialization of human creativity. "But look at what we're gaining," argued Dr. Stone, a psychologist who had been studying the human-alien interactions. "We have access to technologies that will solve all our problems. Disease, poverty, hunger. The aliens can help us eliminate all of these things." "At what cost?" Ellen replied. "We're turning our children into performing monkeys for alien entertainment. We're teaching them that their creativity is only valuable if someone pays for it." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of truck driver Tony Martinez. Tony was an ordinary man who had discovered something extraordinary about himself. When he told stories about his imaginary adventures on long drives, aliens would pay enormous sums just to hear them. "I don't know what to do," Tony said, sitting down heavily. "Yesterday, a group of aliens offered me more money than my entire country makes in a year. All I have to do is spend 1 hour telling them about the fantasy world I imagine while driving. What's wrong with that?" Dr. Stone asked. Tony looked uncomfortable. "It feels wrong, like I'm cheating them somehow. They're paying billions for something that just pops into my head while I'm bored on the highway." Ellen leaned forward. "That's exactly the problem. We're treating our imagination like it's just another commodity, but it's not. It's the essence of who we are." Meanwhile, at the consortium headquarters, alien psychologist Zen 7 was having similar concerns. He had been studying the effects of human imagination on alien minds and had discovered something troubling. "The exposure to human creativity is creating addiction-like patterns in our people," he reported to the consortium leadership. "Many aliens are abandoning their responsibilities to spend all their time experiencing human stories and art." Ambassador Krell 9 looked worried. "How serious is this problem?" "Very serious. Entire departments are non-functional because the workers are too absorbed in human fantasy to perform their duties. Some aliens haven't eaten or slept in days because they don't want to miss a single human story." The situation was becoming critical throughout the galaxy. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the defense fleet was drifting unmanned because the crews had abandoned their posts to listen to human fairy tales. On other worlds, factories had stopped producing goods, governments had stopped governing, and entire civilizations were grinding to a halt. But something else was happening too. Young aliens who had been exposed to human imagination were beginning to show signs of change. A few were starting to create simple stories of their own, or to draw pictures of things that didn't exist. Back on Earth, Tony Martinez was experiencing his own changes. After months of sharing his imagination with aliens, he had begun to see and understand things that no human should be able to comprehend. He could perceive mathematical relationships that had no names, and sometimes he dreamed in colors that didn't exist. "It's like they're changing us too," he told Ellen during one of their meetings. "When I imagine things for them, I can feel their minds touching mine. I'm learning to think in ways that aren't human." This worried Ellen even more. "We don't know what the long-term effects will be. We're conducting the largest experiment in human history, and we're doing it without any safety protocols." At the same time, some humans were beginning to see the broader implications of their situation. Artist Amy Chun had returned from the consortium headquarters with a new understanding of what was happening. "We're not just entertaining them," she explained to a group of human leaders. "We're teaching them to evolve. Every time we use our imagination, we're showing them neural pathways they thought were lost forever." "Is that good or bad?" asked Captain Jake Sullivan. "I don't know," Amy admitted, "but I think it's necessary. The galaxy has been stagnant for millions of years because every species eliminated their creativity. We might be the key to getting them unstuck." The debate continued as more aliens arrived on Earth every day. Some came officially through the consortium, others arrived independently, and a few came secretly, hoping to experience human imagination without their governments knowing. The economic impact was staggering. Earth had gone from being a poor, isolated planet to having more wealth than most galactic empires. Human cities were being rebuilt with alien technology, diseases were being cured with alien medicine, and humanity was advancing centuries in just months. But the social impact was even greater. Human children were growing up knowing they were the most valuable beings in the galaxy. Some became arrogant, others became afraid of the responsibility, and a few seemed to understand the true importance of what they could do. Young Danny Price, the boy who had told the first story to the aliens, had become something of a celebrity. Aliens from across the galaxy knew his name, and his simple tale about a dragon who lived on a cloud had been translated into thousands of languages. "I don't understand why they think my stories are so special," Danny told his mother one evening. "They're just things I make up in my head." "That's exactly why they're special," his mother replied. "You can make up entire worlds in your head, and that's something no other species can do." As the months passed, it became clear that humanity was at a crossroads. They could continue to commercialize their imagination, becoming incredibly wealthy, but potentially losing something essential about themselves. Or they could find a different way to share their gift with the galaxy. The choice would determine not just the future of humanity, but the future of every intelligent species in the universe, in a galaxy where logic asterisk. 3 weeks after first contact, Dr. Lisa Morgan found herself stepping off a Zephyrian transport ship onto the most incredible sight she had ever seen. The Galactic Consortium's capital city stretched out before her like something from a dream, if aliens could dream. Massive towers of crystal and metal reached toward a purple sky, while flying vehicles moved silently between them like schools of fish. She was part of a small human delegation that included writer Danny Price, artist Amy Chan, and engineer Paul Davis. Ambassador Krell 9 had personally invited them to visit the consortium headquarters, saying their presence was urgently needed. "I still can't believe this is real," Amy whispered, staring at the alien architecture that seemed to defy gravity. Buildings twisted and curved in impossible ways, held up by technology that human science couldn't explain. "Neither can I," Paul agreed, his engineer's mind trying to understand how the structures could possibly stand. "But look at the patterns. Everything is so perfectly logical, so mathematical. There's no chaos, no randomness." Danny was quiet, watching the alien beings moving through the streets below. There were hundreds of different species, some tall and thin like the Zephyrians, others short and round, some that looked like walking crystals, and others that seemed to be made of living metal. But they all moved with the same purposeful, logical rhythm. "They're all organized," Danny said finally, "like they're following some invisible plan." Krell 9 appeared beside them, moving with that graceful step that made him seem to float. "Your observation is correct, Danny Price. We are following a plan. The great logic that has guided our civilizations for millions of years." "The great logic?" Lisa asked. "The understanding that perfect order, perfect efficiency, and perfect logic create perfect societies. Every action has a purpose. Every thought serves a function. Every emotion has been refined to serve the greater good." As they walked through the city, Lisa noticed something strange. Despite the incredible diversity of species, they all seemed to behave the same way. They moved efficiently from place to place, spoke only when necessary, and showed no signs of what humans would call playfulness or curiosity. "Where is everyone going?" Amy asked. "To fulfill their assigned functions," Krell 9 replied. "Each being has a role that serves the collective. Scientists conduct research, builders construct, leaders govern. There's no waste, no confusion, no conflict." They arrived at the consortium's main assembly hall, a vast chamber that could hold thousands of beings. Representatives from hundreds of species were already gathered. All watching the small group of humans with intense interest. Scientist Vor Prime stood at the center of the hall and addressed the crowd. Fellow beings of the consortium, we have brought these humans here to demonstrate the phenomenon we discovered on their world. What you are about to witness will challenge everything we understand about consciousness and reality. The crowd was completely silent. Lisa felt nervous as hundreds of alien eyes focused on their small group. She had never felt so different, so alien, even though she was the only human in the room. Danny Price, Worf Prime continued, would you please tell these assembled beings one of your stories? Danny stepped forward, looking scared but determined. He was just a writer from Oregon who had been working on a novel about time travel. When the aliens arrived, now he stood before the greatest gathering of intelligent beings in the galaxy. Okay, Danny said, his voice shaking slightly. Once upon a time, there was a robot who lived alone in a junkyard. The robot was very smart and could fix anything, but it was lonely. One day, the robot found a broken music box with a tiny dancer inside. The robot fixed the music box, and when the dancer began to spin, the robot felt something it had never felt before. It felt ... happy. As Danny continued his story, describing how the robot learned to dance with the tiny ballerina and eventually fell in love with her, something extraordinary happened in the hall. The assembled aliens began to react just as the Zephyrians had on Earth. Their bodies trembled, their eyes widened, and many made soft sounds of wonder or distress. But it was more than that. Lisa watched as different species reacted in different ways. The crystal-like beings began to glow brighter. The metal creatures' surfaces rippled like water. The tall, thin ones swayed as if moved by invisible wind. When Danny finished his story, the hall was completely silent for a long moment. Then slowly, a sound began to build. It was unlike anything Lisa had ever heard. Not quite music, not quite voices, but something that seemed to come from the very souls of the assembled beings. What is that sound? Paul whispered. Kr. EL9's voice was filled with awe. It is the sound of 1,000 species experiencing beauty for the first time in millions of years. After the demonstration, the human delegation was taken to a private chamber where they met with the consortium's leadership. The chief scientist, an ancient being called Vorth Prime, explained what they had witnessed. Your species possesses something we believed was impossible, Vorth Prime said. You can create mental constructs that have no basis in reality, yet feel more real than reality itself. This ability, imagination, triggers responses in our brains that we thought were lost forever. Lost forever? Lisa asked. Yes, long ago. Our ancestors possessed what you might call creative thinking. But as we evolved, as we built our perfect societies, we found that imagination was ... inefficient. It led to chaos, to conflicts, to waste. So we bred it out of ourselves, suppressed it, eliminated it. Amy looked horrified. You got rid of your ability to imagine. Why? Because imagination leads to wants that cannot be satisfied, to dreams that cannot be achieved, to thoughts that serve no practical purpose. We became more efficient, more logical, more perfect, but we lost something else in the process. What? Did you lose? Danny asked. Vor Prime was quiet for a long moment. Joy, wonder, the ability to see beauty in things that serve no function, the capacity to dream of better worlds than the ones we have built. Another being stepped forward. This one was shorter and rounder than the others, with skin that changed colors like a chameleon. I am Zen 7, a student of consciousness. What we have discovered is that when humans exercise their imagination, they release chemicals in their brains that create feelings of pleasure, satisfaction, and emotional depth. These same chemicals exist in our brains, but they have been dormant for so long that we forgot they were there. So when we tell stories or create art, we're activating something in your brains that you lost? Paul asked. Exactly. And the effect is profound. In the few minutes that Danny Price told his story, I experience more emotional range than I have in the past century of my existence. Lisa felt a chill. This is why you came to Earth, not just to study us, but because you need us. Yes, Krail 9 admitted. We have achieved everything we thought we wanted. We have ended war, hunger, disease, and death. We have perfect societies, unlimited resources, and complete understanding of the physical universe. But we have also created a galaxy of beings who cannot feel true happiness, who cannot dream of impossibilities, who cannot find meaning in beauty. And now, Amy asked, now we face a choice. We can continue our existence of perfect logic and efficiency, or we can learn from you. We can remember what it means to dream. The meeting continued for hours as the aliens explained more about their civilization. They told the humans about the thousands of species in the consortium, each one more advanced than humanity in terms of technology and social organization, but each one lacking the spark of creativity that made humans unique. There is something else you must know, Voice Prime said as the meeting was ending. Word of your abilities is spreading throughout the galaxy. Other species, other civilizations beyond our consortium are learning about human imagination. Many will want to experience it for themselves. What does that mean for us? Lisa asked. It means that humanity is about to become the most important species in the galaxy. What you can do, what you take for granted, is more valuable than all the technology and resources in the universe combined. As they prepared to return to their quarters, Danny asked a question that had been bothering him all day. If you've lost the ability to imagine, how do you create new things? How do you solve problems you've never faced before? Zen 7's skin shifted to a deep blue color. We don't. We have not had a truly new idea in over 1,000,000 years. We refine existing concepts. We improve efficiency. We perfect what already exists. But we cannot create something genuinely new. We cannot imagine solutions that don't already exist in our databases. That's why your society has been the same for so long, Amy realized. You've reached a point where you can't grow anymore because growth requires imagination. Yes, and that is why your species represents hope for the entire galaxy. You can imagine things that never existed, dream of possibilities we cannot conceive, and create beauty from nothing. In a universe of perfect logic, you are perfectly illogical. And that may be exactly what we need. That night, as Lisa lay in her strange alien bed looking out at the purple sky, she thought about what they had learned. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't alone, but they were unique in a way no one had ever imagined. Wait till that Respo asterisk.